Hello, everyone. My name is Israel, and I'm with the volunteer team for the Root Causes Project. We're here to talk about the final version of our volunteer application. We'll be taking questions at the end. First, I'll introduce the team. Kylie, Karen, Tanvi, Isa, Fernando, and me. This is the overview for this presentation. First, we'll go over the workflow of the Root Causes Fresh Produce program, then describe the problem that we had, our solution, the tools used to develop the solution, our prototypes and demo, challenges, and future features we have planned. Now I'll pass it over to Fernando to talk about the workflow and problem.
So here's a visual of the Fresh Produce program workflow. Within this program, volunteers are divided into 3 distinct roles, which are callers, packers, and drivers. Looking at the weekly workflow on Monday and Tuesday, admin takes care of their tasks. On Wednesday and Thursday, callers call participants who require follow-up given they didn't respond to the mass text. Callers then update the status of the participant accordingly. And on Friday, drivers receive their delivery routes. On Saturday, packers pack the fresh produce for deliveries and drivers make those deliveries. When this project was presented onto us, there were 3 notable problems that we needed to address. The first one being the fact that volunteers had to keep track of too many platforms, including GroupMe, Power Apps, and Google Sheets to carry out their tasks. Volunteers currently use GroupMe to notify admin once they have completed their deliveries, Power Apps to view their route assignments, and Google Sheets to sign up for volunteering. The second problem is that once volunteers complete their tasks, whether that be calling participants or completing their deliveries, Root Causes admin has to manually update a master Excel spreadsheet with updated participant statuses and add new columns to track deliveries made on a weekly basis. All of this can be tiresome and tedious. This leads me to the last problem, which is that this entire process is not very scalable nor sustainable for future growth. As Root Causes serves more and more participants through the Fresh Produce program, participant data would become hard to manage, admin would have to take on much more manual labor, and assignments would become much more difficult to assign to volunteers. And now I'll pass it off to Isa to talk about our solution to the issues mentioned within the program.
Thank you, Fernando. So as Fernando just explained, the Fresh Produce program relies on outsourcing for volunteer communication, requiring volunteers to use a variety of platforms to fulfill their duties. Our solution to these problems is a mobile-friendly web application that communicates with the admin app so that volunteers can complete their roles in one centralized location. Through this app, volunteers can register for and log into their account via the register and login pages, view their assigned calls, update a participant's availability status for food delivery, and take notes on their conversation with their participants via the calls page. On the routes page, they can view their assigned routes, confirm participants' delivery, take notes for easier home identification, and upload images for future deliveries. And finally, they can sign up to volunteer on a monthly basis and up to a month in advance on the monthly sign-up sheet. Now I'll pass it off to Karen to discuss the tools and technology we use to achieve this.
Thank you, Isa. So we use a variety of tools to help us accomplish this. For our design, we use Figma, and our mockups were in HTML and CSS. Our front end used React and JavaScript. Our backend used Flask and a Postgres database. We use VS Code as just like a text editor, GitLab, and pgadmin to view our database. And this is kind of just like a diagram of how our app works. This is our stack. Starting off the React app, which is what the volunteers actually interact with. To view data or to send back data, there are Axios requests done that are sent to the Flask API that we built. And then SQL Alchemy is used to query to the database. This database is a shared database between the admin app and the volunteer app. And it was kind of described in the previous presentation. Then the database returns query data to the Flask API, and the Flask API reformats that into JSON, and it is then displayed onto the React app. And here are our initial prototypes. These were just done in HTML and CSS. After talking to our Microsoft sponsors, they suggested that we use React since it would be easier to implement a lot of the features that we wanted to use in our app. So now I'll pass it off to Kylie, who will show us a demo of the final product.
So I'm just going to lead us through a demo. So when volunteers first go to the site, they're taken to the login page. and if they don't have an account, they can click to register and make an account. So they will input all of their relevant information. So first name, last name, their email address, their password, their phone number, how they're affiliated with Duke. If they are, to volunteer with Root Causes, you do not have to be affiliated with Duke. Any non-English languages they speak, and then they'll answer just a couple more questions. So is this the first time they're volunteering? Are they volunteering for credit? And have they completed the HIPAA training? After that, they'll register and make their account. So if a volunteer tries to log in using an email that isn't registered with an account, it'll ask them to register and take them to the register page. If they try to log in using an email address that is registered but input the wrong password, it'll ask them to try logging in again. And finally, if a volunteer uses an email address that is registered and the correct password, they will be taken to the home page. So here's the homepage of our site with the date, just a couple photos welcoming volunteers to the site. They can click to view their profile. So this just contains the information that was inputted when they registered and made their account. They can also click on the homepage to sign up for volunteering. So this is the sign up page. It has the 8 following Saturdays from the current date. So they can sign up to be a driver, packer, caller. For driver, these are just a couple more preferences they can select. And again, packer and caller forms as well. So this is the routes page for volunteers who are acting as drivers. So they will see the list of participants and their addresses where they need to drop deliveries off at. So they're able to click on those addresses, and it'll just be the Google Maps page with that address inputted to more easily get to that location. They can also click on the number to call in case they need to ask the participant anything. Volunteers are also able to submit notes and images. So these images just help future volunteers when they're making the same delivery. It'll be easier to identify the house because they know what they're looking for. So if you go back to that person, that image will be there. And then, like I said, they're also able to submit notes so you can just have further clarification or maybe something that future volunteers need to know about the participant as well. And then lastly on this page, drivers are able to click and submit once they've made a delivery so that admin knows when that delivery was made. So, and then the time updates on most recent delivery when this demo was filmed. This is the calls page for volunteers who decide that they want to be callers. So these are the participants who didn't respond initially to that mass text. So when no response is clicked again, that participant remains on the page because they still have not responded. Again, the time updates, and similar to the routes page, volunteers can take notes. So this could be how the participant is doing, maybe if they need more bags of food, anything along those lines. So there's that note again. And then we also made this web application mobile friendly because volunteers will likely be using it on their phone, whether that be to call participants, or if they're making those deliveries, they're probably looking at the addresses on their phone. So there's the home page, the register page, the login page, the routes page again, and going down to the image that was submitted, the calls page, and finally the volunteer sign up page. So that concludes the demo. Now I'm going to pass it off to Isa to discuss challenges that we faced.
So the first major challenge that we faced was definitely communication between both teams in terms of planning as well as technically. Before actually coding anything, we needed to coordinate styles, concepts, and technology to ensure that the apps looked cohesive in the end and could successfully communicate with each other. This goes into another point about connecting to the shared root causes database. Both teams shared a database, however, our team had not originally been working with the shared database. So merging the two teams' backends and altering our code accordingly was definitely a challenge. If the volunteer and admin teams had merged our backends and database earlier on, we could have saved some time in the end. Finally, achieving our full stack application came with a steep learning curve that we hadn't originally anticipated. And since no one on our team had ever had experience connecting the front end to the back end to the database, we had to do a lot of research on our own time, especially in implementing complex features like the upload images feature on the routes page. So now I'll pass it off to Tombi to discuss some future features.
All right, so thank you, Isa. Some features that we weren't able to implement this summer, given the time constraints of Code Plus, mainly revolve around user authentication. So we envision that the next steps of the volunteer application involve implementing cookies to keep track of volunteer sessions when they log in and before they log out. We hope that these cookies can then be accessed to display a volunteer's individual profile information to their account page after they log in, and that volunteers can then edit their profile information if necessary, and then send this information back to our root causes database and the admin application. Most importantly, we hope to only display the calls and routes assigned to the volunteer currently logged in, so that volunteers can't view a participant's information if they're not assigned to call or deliver to them. We also hope to host our website on a remote server, as our current application runs on a local host. So in summary, we covered what volunteers do for root causes. They can sign up to be a caller, driver, or packer, which means they can help confirm deliveries, pack groceries, and deliver to patients' households. We covered the problem root causes faces and that their volunteer operations use multiple platforms right now and is currently not very scalable for future growth. We presented some of our initial prototypes and our final solution that organizes volunteer involvement into one web application that we created using React and Flask, as well as Postgres for our database. And lastly, we discussed some of the challenges we faced and future features we hope can be implemented to fully streamline root causes volunteer operations. So now I'll pass it back to Israel to thank everyone who has helped us along the way.
Thank you, Connie. Now we would like to acknowledge everyone who helped us along the way. Thank you to our stakeholders, Esco Brimmel and Willis Wong over at Root Causes, to our Microsoft sponsors, to our team leads, Vanessa Simmons, Will Sexton, Kyle Skinak, and Todd Blanford, to Denai Atkinson and the CoLab team, and to Jen Visas and Isabel Falls for leading this incredible program. We will now be taking questions.